I don't know about you, but I love a great leader who can move, motivate, or inspire me to do something, to take action, to do good, or to become a better version of myself. On a recent trip to visit schools with my goddaughter, I found myself asking these very questions. Who will motivate her? Which teachers can inspire her? In which environment will she thrive? And where can she become the best version of her future self? It was in the late 80s when a single mother was in search of the right place for her son. She needed a safe place. He needed male role models, and Grandma wanted solid values that matched her own. Through conviction and sacrifice, this single mom sent her son, Paul, to LA Catholic schools, where he attended St John Bosco and went on to attend and graduate from Cornell University. Mr. Escala now runs the largest Catholic school district in the country, right here in Los Angeles. My conversation with Mr. Paul Escala moved and inspired me in a way that I haven't been for some time now. What became so clear to me was that the sacrifice that his mother made was not lost on him. Paul took advantage of every opportunity along the way, brushed off any naysayers, and had the audacity to dream as a young freshman in high school. His grit and determination served as a reminder to me of what life is all about: making the best of the resources you have and then paying it forward. This interview is the first in a 5-part mini-series that will run all week. If you are a parent in search of a safe place filled with caring adults while teaching solid values alongside math and English, LA Catholic schools may just be what you're looking for. To quote Paul Escala, dream bigger, aspire greater. That's what Catholic schools do. Whether you are a Catholic, a non-Catholic, or simply a JV Catholic like myself, I promise you, any parent who wants the very best for their child will take away something from this episode. Enjoy. You're listening to Destination University, a podcast for college-bound teens and the parents and mentors and educators who support them. If that is you, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. Welcome to our special mini-series with the LA Catholic schools. With over 250 schools in Santa Barbara, Ventura, and Los Angeles County, it is the largest Catholic school district in the country. Today, you are in for a treat. We are here with Paul Escala, the superintendent who leads a team of administrators, educators, and mentors who teach and serve over 80,000 students and families across the district. If you are a sucker for a good story about a young boy who grows up only to return to serve his community, this episode is a must. If you are a varsity Catholic, or like me, aspiring to move from JV status to varsity, trust me, you'll want to stick with us for this entire series. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Cynthia Colon. Welcome to Destination University, where we explore extraordinary people who lived ordinary childhoods and found a pathway to college. Being here today makes you a rock star, just like Paul. Congratulations and welcome. Hello, Paul. How are you doing today?
I'm well. Nice to see you, Cynthia.
Good. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to kick off this special mini-series all about the LA Catholic schools. You know, it's near and dear to my heart, having been part of 3 different of the Catholic schools. And so I'm excited to talk to you today. What is happening? Tell us about your background here. I love it. And I think everybody should know what this is in your background.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So I'm here today with you really as a result of love, care, and commitment, a level of resiliency that I think many of our families, particularly families who have ties to countries globally, who've come to this country as immigrants, who are grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and children of immigrants. That is part of my story. I grew up in the harbor area of Los Angeles and San Pedro in Wilmington.
Yeah.
My mom raised me on her own as a single mom. I was an only child, and really as a result of the love and care of my grandparents and my extended family, the sacrifices that my mom made in a very humble upbringing to send me to a Catholic school put me in a position to be exposed to have the privilege of a great faith-based education, which now has translated into a phenomenal career that I didn't expect. And so it's been an extraordinary journey for me in my life, and certainly coming from statistically a place where a young boy growing up on the wrong side of the tracks, kid of color, single mom, all those statistics really don't play in your favor. But the common denominator for success for many, if not all, was this true commitment, care, and love for me, and an education that was going to present great opportunity for me if I accepted it, which I have, and here we are.
That's amazing. Now, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. You grew up with a single mom, and you were an only child, no siblings, right?
Correct.
And you had grandparents, so it sort of took a little mini village to raise you. And San Pedro is not, I know that you went to St. John Bosco, which we'll talk about in a second, but it's not close to San Pedro. So that was a drive, and that was quite a commitment. So before we get to your time at St. John Bosco, how and when did your mom make that decision to put you into the Catholic school system?
Very early in my life, kindergarten, really, and my mom worked full time. She is a civil servant at the County of Los Angeles, Community and Senior Services. Worked nearly 40 years there, and she tells me the story. And being very, very young, she had a choice to make. She could have sent me to an LA Unified public school, where she could have saved some more money, maybe bought a house, maybe had a little bit more comfort. But know that I would have not gotten a complete education. And by complete, meaning a faith-based education where God and our Christian values are at the center of who we are, and create a complete educational experience. The other alternative was this Catholic experience where she had to make sacrifices to pay tuition, and she opted for the harder road. I'm a big fan of Robert Frost, and so the path less take, less traveled by, and that's made all the difference for me. So her sacrifice, and having lived with my grandparents in a one-bedroom duplex, sleeping, on a couch, those were things that at the time, I didn't quite understand why we didn't have what my peers had. I went to a parish school where a lot of wealthy kids went to school, and my mom didn't have a whole lot. Sometimes she was between cars and somebody else was driving me, and it wasn't exactly a Mercedes or a BMW. So I recall asking, to be dropped off a couple of blocks away, because I didn't want anyone to see the car that I was driving up in. Those have lasting memories for kids, but it creates grit and perseverance, I believe. It certainly has in my life. And so, yeah, that road less traveled by made all the difference. My mom made that sacrifice, and made it very at early stage. No matter where we lived, we moved a lot around town, but I always had the school was my anchor. That was my rock.
Right. The Catholic school was always your anchor. That's interesting. And it's interesting that as children, we don't realize what the sacrifice is. We don't really sort of put it all together, but now you can reflect back. Hindsight is 2020, and see there was a bigger goal in mind. There was a bigger mission that she had for you. So take us up to that point. So you go through elementary school and middle school and in your local Catholic school, and then you have to essentially apply to different high schools. So can you walk us through? So for those many listeners probably don't know or understand what that next step would be once you are ready for high school. So what was that like?
Yeah, great question. So I'm attending Holy Trinity School in San Pedro, and those of you not familiar with this part of the world, it is the harbor area of Los Angeles. We have a bustling port in Los Angeles, and my family were all dock workers and refinery workers. I was the one who was going to go to college. I was sort of the one who wasn't going to work, out there in that space, that sector. So it wasn't a question. It was never a question of whether or not I was going to, stop my Catholic education. It was never a question whether or not I was going to go to college. The question only was, which high school are you going to go to, and which college are you going to go to, and we will figure it out money-wise. It oftentimes becomes the greatest barrier to most families when they consider a Catholic education or a non-public school, is how are we going to afford it? And parents make great sacrifices to do it because they understand that that sacrifice is going to yield great dividends for their children. And I think my mom had to make that bet. Wasn't completely certain, but her faith in God and my family's, sort of rallying around me and helping my mom make it happen for me gave me a great sense of responsibility. So making that decision, starting to interact with high schools in 6th, 7th grade, I thought I was on my way to Loyola High School. And again, the Jesuits do a phenomenal job in creating a great environment for high schoolers, particularly young men. And without my dad in my life, my grandfather really was my father, but I needed more male role models, particularly coming up through adolescence. That made a big difference for me. And I spent a summer at Loyola on scholarship and got to experience it. It was very, very different than what I was used to out of my sort of humble abode in a very tight-knit, community that I grew up in. It was actually in 8th grade when I was exposed to a different high school. And it was somebody who in my life became a mentor of mine, a teacher and a coach, a gentleman by the name of Bill Urak, who showed up at a high school night at Holy Trinity. They had all these high schools there, and you go to these events and you listen to each speaker. Each one presents their pitch. They get an elevator pitch to tell you why their school is for you. And again, I had already gone through a summer program at Loyola. And so I thought that's where I was going to go, even though it was extremely expensive for us. But it was this man who was the only one who came around and introduced himself personally after the pitch. He came to me. I didn't have to go to him. He introduced himself. And turns out he was a retired Marine drill sergeant. I looked at his shoes and could see my image in his shoes, his mirrored shoes that were so shiny. And he just had this stoic look on his face. And he looked right at me and he said, "You need to come with me to St. John Bosco and see this school. I think you would fit there very, very well." And I did. I didn't know where Bellflower was. It was on the east side of Los Angeles County, and it was the other direction for me. But it was, again, that road less traveled by that. Sorry, I get a little emotional with it because it was such a pivotal moment in my life to be introduced to this school, and I never looked back. And I ended up matriculating there, and my mom because we had a small group of kids who went, maybe 2 or 3 kids, and we carpooled and would get dropped. I get dropped off at the Ralph's parking lot, the supermarket parking lot, at 6 o'clock in the morning to make that drive every day until I was able to drive myself, and I had a part-time job. And it just, those are the things that you do to make it happen.
Wow. Okay. So this man with the shiny shoes, Bill, introduces himself to you and says, "You've got to come with me. This is where you belong." And I assume you then went to go visit it. But it drives home the point for me that schools are not made up of just buildings. They're made up of people. And somehow there was a connection with that person. And perhaps your mom thought, "Oh, I feel comfortable leaving my son, knowing he's going to be mentored. You knew you needed more male role models." So, right? Am I right?
Yes.
That's what happened. Our schools are made up of people, and there was connections. Who else in those 4 years was pivotal in your life at Bosco?
Yeah. I think every relationship that we carry with us is all predicated on trust. And trust ultimately is formed out of love. I think you have to have a love and a care for people. And I think that has been a significant difference in our schools, because our schools are ministries of a faith. We're not a government agency. We don't have to exist. We choose to exist because we believe fundamentally that part of our ministry as Catholics is to serve and to educate in the faith, but also academically and physically. So I think when you consider that premise, my mom trusted this school. All parents, ultimately, when you drop your child off every day, you are trusting them, the school, with the people that they're going to take care of your child, and they're going to make sure that your child is well educated and is cared for. And so, other people who really were part of my formation at Bosco really started back at Holy Trinity with my 8th grade teacher, who was also my basketball coach and also was the drama coach. And we wear lots of hats in Catholic schools. You got to have multiple jobs. And his name was Mike Lansing. And interesting, fast forward to that, this is the man who also became my first boss out of college. He ended up becoming the best man in my wedding and is the godfather to my firstborn. That is the story of our schools. And you're right, Cynthia, it's not about bricks and mortars. It's not about fancy buildings and bonds that are to build more buildings. It's the human beings in those schools that make a difference. So I'm looking back on my life, and every single aspect of relationships that I've had in my life has all been formed by one central component, and that has been church, that has been our school. So yes, a teacher becomes my boss, becomes my best man, becomes my son's godfather. At St. John Bosco, teachers, coaches, individuals like Pat Lee, Bob Linares, Walt Whippler, these are individual teachers who all believed in me, who didn't let me quit in classroom and outside of it, who, when I had this audacious goal of going to Cornell University, my first day as a freshman in high school, I walked into the college counseling office, your world, and I start looking at all of, at the time, brochures. Yes, we had hard copy brochures, and it would all be lined up like magazines all over the wall. And I saw this big, giant red brochure. It was bigger than all of them. It was called the Big Red Book. I had no idea what it was, but when I opened the first page, all I saw was foliage and a waterfall and a Gothic building, and it says Cornell University. I have no idea where Cornell is, but I saw this image and I said, I want to be there. That is where I want to go. And I started going through it and looking at it, and everything spoke to me. And it's this place in Ithaca, New York, central New York, 5 hours outside of New York City. the furthest away from Los Angeles you can possibly imagine in every way, shape, and form. And I said, that is where I want to go, and I'm going to work every day to get there. And I did.
Oh my goodness. Okay, you're speaking my language, of course, as you know. The Big Red Book, Cornell. First of all, it's one of my favorite of the Ivies. And we have one of our campers who's going there next year.
Yeah.
But what you just described, ninth grade, you go into the college counseling office, which most freshmen don't do. You go there, you look at the hard copy brochures. I love the explanation. The people are like, what is that? What is a vision? What is a brochure? Yeah. And you find this one. And we teach our campers that it's all about dreaming about something, sharing your dream with as many people who will listen, and completely believing. And for 4 years, that's what you did. You completely believed that that's where you were meant to be, and you were chipping away at your goal every single day. And you had the support, believers, supporters, cheerleaders along the way in the form of your male role models. So obviously there are female teachers there as well, but you had people surrounding you saying, yes, we support this dream. And that's what Catholic schools do. They want you to go on, of course, to college. And I love that you said earlier, it was never a matter if you're going to college, or, it was a matter of where. So you picked Cornell. So Cornell, you picked it as a freshman. Oh my goodness. Did you ever go visit before you went there?
Yeah, I did. I had the opportunity to visit in my junior year. I had an opportunity. I got invited to go out for a few days. And I'll never forget it, the first night. And this is in October, so it's starting to get really cold. And I just feel, really alone, because again, I will tell you that one of the facets of Catholic schools is we are very much loved up, we're very much cared for. And suddenly you're thrusted into a completely different world where nobody knows you. It's a giant university. It can be feel very isolating and very alone. And I'll never forget that night. I picked up a payphone, called collect. During these times when you did such things, like kids have no idea what I'm talking about, but there were these things called payphones. You put money into them, coins, and you call collect. I called collect, charge it back to my mom. And I said, I don't think this is for me. I feel alone. It's cold. I thought it was going to be all these great things, and it isn't what I thought. And I remember my mom saying, it's your first time away in this way, and I think you got to give it a chance. You got to give it a chance. Stick with it, and wait for the next couple of days. And sure enough, next day, the next couple of days being there, I started to feel a little differently about it. But really, that first visit was not what I thought it would be. And it was culture shock. It was just sort of just different, and I didn't know what to think of it. And I think that it's okay to feel that way. It's absolutely okay, but don't go on your first reaction. Give yourself that opportunity. I think that's important. I would also say this too, Cynthia. I confronted adversity in this dream of mine, and I will tell you, and I'll keep the names out of it. But not everybody believed that I could do this. Not everyone did. There were people in my orbit who were in the school, in my high school, not peers, but adults, and others outside of that world, who, when presented with this audacious goal, were saying, "Gosh, that sounds like a huge leap for you. That sounds like, do you have the grades? Do you have the SAT scores? Can you do it?" And well, gosh, have you thought maybe about a Cal State school? Maybe a state school will be better for you, because that's a big financial burden on your mom. I could have chosen to take that a different way. I could have accepted that criticism. I could have said, "Oh gosh, you're right. Maybe I need to think differently about this. Maybe this isn't for me." But I chose not to. When confronted with that reaction, I took that as a challenge. And I said, okay, watch me. And I worked even harder. I worked harder because I needed not to prove to them, but to prove to myself that that kind of perspective, that dream killing perspective, even well intentioned, could change your life dramatically if you let it. You can't let the noise get in your head. You can't let anyone dissuade you from what you believe you can accomplish, no matter what, whether it's a parent, whether it's a family member, a sibling, a teacher, a counselor, anyone. Even the best intentions, you have to follow your dreams. You have to believe in yourself, because at the end, nobody else knows you better than you.
Thank you for sharing and being so honest and candid, because every human being and every child, teen is going to experience some naysayers, somebody who doesn't believe, or someone who's negative Nelly, or just pushes. And, we can't know if that was, you mentioned early, those of you who are watching can see Paul Escala is of a Latino background, and what many would say a student of color. And sometimes we are told different things than our white counterparts. So that could have played a role. We don't know what is in someone's heart, really. But the truth is, your mother and your grandparents had set the groundwork from early on to give you the foundation of belief, and set you up with lots of people more positive and believers than because one person that says no, you could have been like, oh, okay, maybe you're right. But you had a strong foundation of believers from the very get-go. So bravo to your mom, and bravo to you for just sticking with your, you were hyper focused on your dream. So
yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Oh, I just love this story. The Big Red Book. By the way, and we're going to talk about the district, the LA Catholic schools that you oversee next. But just so you don't feel alone, when I went to Columbia and was living in New York City for the first time outside of California, I was wearing my long wool coat by October, and I went to class because it was freezing, air quotes, those of you who are listening, I'm doing air quotes, it was freezing. And someone said to me, what, you're wearing a wool coat, what are you going to do when it's really cold? That's the warmest coat you have. And I'm like, it gets colder than this. I was shocked. So yeah, Californians, what are you going to do?
I remember my mom sending me in January, February time, when it was, really bone chilling cold, wind chill factor of -20, and long john underwear, and I was layered with 3 or 4 layers, and I looked completely foreign to everybody else because I was just a California kid, and I could never experience cold like that before. So yeah, I can relate to that for sure.
Yeah. Not even Big Bear is cold enough. It's
No.
it's way colder. Oh my gosh. Well, we're getting to a part where I like to ask all of our guests to share a tip, a tale, and a truth. We're going to start with having you describe a tale. Describe sort of one story about a student or a family that stands out in your mind, that is from the Catholic school system. I know you have worked, not necessarily in your role for many years, but you've worked in the whole the LA Catholic school system in various roles. So draw from your time at Bosco, it was president at Bosco, or your time now, but describe a family that sticks in your mind.
There was a family that I was honored to get to know and to help achieve a dream of theirs, and very similar to my background. Single mom who was raising multiple children on her own. A young man who got into St. John Bosco. Very humble young man, Polynesian descent, and very humble. And mom lost her job and the tuition assistance that we were providing just really wasn't enough to make ends meet. She was going to have to pull her son from the school. And I was my first year into the job, and I was still learning the ropes, so to speak. But I had been confronted with several of these stories over my time, just my early days and throughout my tenure there. So I knew that I was going to confront this in as sort of business-like as I possibly could. You listen and you hear them out, and you say what you need, what you can say at the time, but you're not able to help as much as, because everybody is in need, and it's really difficult, but particularly with our school, where we were supporting a lot of kids who otherwise could not afford to be there. And so but something was different about this young man that really stood out to me. First of all, he was a strong academic student. He had a character and fortitude and a drive that I really admired, and frankly, personally, saw a lot of him in me. And mom was crying in my office. Teacher was there, and the young man was there, and I could tell he was very humbled, almost embarrassed that his mom was there to ask for help, or she would have had to pull him. And she was very transparent around where they were at. And I just remember looking at this young man, and I said, son, if I were to help you, are you willing to do what it takes to earn that support? Are you willing to go the extra mile, work extra hard, not just get the grades, but to really end the cycle of poverty? And that's a lot of responsibility on a 15-year-old, but I'm going to do this because I believe in you, and I believe that you're going to earn a scholarship, and I believe you're going to go to college, and I believe you're going to do something with yourself. This is a young man who had aspirations to go into the NFL. And we hear this all the time, particularly in our most competitive high schools. This is a young man who had those aspirations, and he was a multi-sport athlete, was also extremely smart and did very well in the classroom. He said, yes, Mr. Escala, I will do whatever it takes. I love this school. I love St. John Bosco High School, and I'll do whatever it takes. Mom says, I'll do whatever it takes. I will volunteer. I will cook. I will clean. I will do whatever it takes to keep my son. My son needs to stay here because I'm worried that if I send him to public school, he's going to get caught up in gangs. And we live in a tough neighborhood, and they'll get him, and I'll never see him again. So I took it upon myself to figure out how to get a few bucks in philanthropically. We made it happen. Long story short, this is a young man who goes on to earn a full ride scholarship to UCLA and is now playing in the NFL. He achieved his dream. He is playing for the NFL, and it changed his family's life, changed his life. And I can look on a Sunday and see that young man out on the field and know that we have a relationship that goes back many, many years. And it's extremely rewarding to me to know that I was able to help that young man a little bit, contribute to his life and help turn things around. But he did all the work. He had to put in the work, and he did. And it's an exceptional, rewarding gift that I get to have. So yeah, that's a story that comes to
you
me.
just took my breath away. What?
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, you just said that he had to put in all the work. So whatever you were able to do in terms of financially, nobody gets to UCLA and then the NFL without putting in the work, serious work. So you lived up to your word, your promise. You said the words, I believe in you, over and over again to him, and the rest is history. So, amazing story. So good.
And there's lots of those stories, right? And that one just happens to be, a rarefied air, right? Making it into on a roster to play on a Sunday for the NFL, in this case, the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, that's rarefied air, but there are so many other stories like that. You're not going to get in the paper for a lot of the things that these kids are doing, but the message there is that if you're willing to put the work in, you can do it. You really can. It's not a Hallmark card. You just have to really believe, and you have to be persistent no matter how many times you get knocked down, no matter how many times people tell you you can't do it. You can do it. But if you let that noise in, you let it creep into your mind, that's the X factor. And a lot of kids do. And that's the difference between success and not having it.
And I do think that maybe, well, I'll ask you what the one truth is that you want everybody to know, but a lot of our Catholic schools are able to help students pinpoint their X factor. In my world, we call it your coolness factor. What's your coolness factor? So that brings us to the truth. So as the superintendent, leading, like I said, over 250 schools, what's the one truth that you want current families and also prospective families? What do you want them to know about Catholic schools, LA Catholic schools?
I want them to know that a complete education can't be achieved truly if the heart is not at the center of what we do. And in Catholic schools, we practice what we preach every day by putting the heart at the center of who we are and what we're about. Whether you're Catholic or not, it really doesn't matter. What matters is that you believe fundamentally that good citizenship, character, integrity, honesty, ethics, moral values matter in education. That instruction can't just happen at home in isolation. That we need to bring it out in everything that we do in the world of education, because we're forming the next generation of leaders. We want those leaders to be honest. We want them to be transparent. We want them to be ethical. Think about people who get into trouble as they go into adulthood and they end up taking on elected official positions or appointed positions or positions in the hierarchy of government, business, anything in the world. Everything that they are, everything that they do is formed back in their childhood. And I will tell you that I'm proud to say that when you look at kids who have grown up through the Catholic schools, who go on to be leaders, they always attribute their moral compass, their integrity, their character on their Catholic school upbringing and education. Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor, she is a product of Catholic schools in New York City, and she talks about in her briefings, in her speeches, she talks about her formation in Catholic schools, right? And so you think about, there is somebody who represents the highest level of integrity in our human society, in this experiment, this American experiment. But it's messy, Cynthia. It's messy. It is not a straight line. It is not perfect. This is a human endeavor. We are all flawed. And in our church, we all are sinners. We all believe that we are not perfect. And so it is not a straight line. Education, formation of the human being requires more than just a instructional and pedagogical relationship. It requires a relationship with the heart. And our intersection of the heart is Christ. And whether, again, you believe or not believe, all parents want their kids to go to a school, or should want their kids to go to a school that speaks truth to power with integrity, character, and values and ethics. And I like to believe that our schools represent that. And while none of them are perfect, we aspire greater. That's the one truth. Where our aspirations are higher because we are called to a higher standard. And I've worked in all facets of our sector. I have led a charter school network. I have led in a public school, largest public school district in the state of California, second largest in the United States. I have led ed reform efforts in Sacramento and in Los Angeles with mayors and governors. I will tell you that our Catholic schools are called to a higher standard. than all other systems. And as a result of that aspiration, we are always growing. We're always striving to achieve more. And if we fall, we always look to our school communities to help us get back up. So it takes parents, it takes teachers, it takes principals, it takes an entire family and a community to form that child. And that's how we're designed. We're designed for that purpose. Not every system is. Most systems are not.
Okay, listeners, okay, if you didn't just get chills, I don't know what to tell you. I just got chills. Aspire to something greater. That's what Catholic schools do. Couldn't have said it better. So good, Paul. And at the end of the day, we talk about, it's about people. We look to our leaders, and from when it's at the top, when it's you, and all of that is trickling down, that's going to reap benefits at every single one of those 250 plus schools. Okay, so the almost last question, but it's the tip. So you yourself are a parent, and I know you've got your kids in Catholic schools already as well, but offer your best parental tip to our listeners. Specifically, I'm thinking about, yes, there are current families who will be listening and watching, but there are many perhaps that are like your mom. They're single parents, are wondering what to do. They have their kids currently in public school or charter school, but are feeling like they're worried, like this young man, his mom was worried. She didn't want him to leave Bosco. So what is the best tip that you can offer? What would be the next step for someone who's thinking, I think I want to try that? What would be your best tip for them?
My best tip is to open yourself up, be vulnerable to an authentic relationship, seek out an authentic relationship. And it starts with you. Take a little bit of a risk, because your relationship with a Catholic school is going to be fundamentally different than it is with a public school. We ask a lot of our parents and our guardians and our families. It is a family endeavor. And for some families that just isn't right. But even for a family like mine, was non-traditional. My mom found ways to give back and to be involved. And she was a working mom, and she couldn't volunteer the hours that other parents could. She couldn't make the donations that other parents could. And that's okay. We work with parents all the time on these things. But the authenticity of yourself is what I would say is the great way to start. Is if you are seeking an authentic relationship with your school, then you have already opened yourself up to a different type of educational opportunity for your child. Seek out information. I will tell you that, unfortunately, we live in a world now where we're polluted by opinions and anonymity, people hiding behind avatars and anonymous names that say a lot of things that are their truth, may not be yours. Find out for yourself. Seek out advice from people like Dr. Cologne. Seek out information at the school. Go to the school, knock on the door, pick up the phone, talk to the principal, talk to a teacher, talk to a parent, because that is your community. And that, again, is the difference between us and everyone else, is that we're not a centralized system. Every one of our schools is a local community nonprofit, and they run themselves. We don't have a relationship the same way that an LA Unified or a Long Beach or other school districts have with their schools. We are accompanying families in our schools, but our pastors and our principals are the ones who are running day to day. They are the ones who are working straight with the community. And that type of community-based organization is very responsive to parents. So they will welcome you. They will welcome you with open arms and be willing to welcome you into their community if you give them the opportunity to do so.
Amen. Oh my gosh, that is so, so true. Each one is its own community. So go seek them out. Love that. Okay, here's my final question. I'm kind of blending two things because I cannot leave without acknowledging and congratulating you on the $50 million anonymous gift that came in just recently, I understand. So tied with my final question, which is this, what gets you up every day? What do you, as a superintendent with this many families under your jurisdiction, what gets you up every day? And sort of wrapped in that, what will you do? What's the first priority as you think about the next 5 years of this donation?
What gets me up every day is winning for kids. I believe that kids need aggressive advocates who are going to stop at nothing to make sure that their dream is possible. Someone sent down the elevator for me, Cynthia. Someone sent it down. After they went up, they sent it back down for me. Someone extended their hand and said, come with me. You need to come with me. Someone did that. So I need to do the same for children. And that's been my calling. And it was not one that I expected. I thought I was on my way to law school and I'd do very well and I'd sort of just be, focused in on a legal career. And again, it was a former teacher of mine who invited me to be part of something that he was joining in LA Unified as a new school board member. And I became his chief of staff and I never looked back. And 22 years later, here I am, blessed and humbled by the opportunity to serve children. So I get up every day with them in mind, even on the hardest days, particularly during this pandemic, when it was life and death. And do we keep our schools open? Do we have to close them? What does it mean? What is it going to mean for our schools, our people? And fighting every day to win for kids. I'm very competitive. I do not like to lose. And so I am going to find a way forward. That's been my life story, is finding a way every single day to ensure that I am able to make it better for others. That is the reward. That is why educators do what they do. It's what we do every day. And whether you're a firefighter or a doctor, a lawyer, a business person, your passions are driven all by the same. You want to make it better. And some are more selfish than others. Maybe it's about making themselves better. But in our world, we have the fortunate blessing of really, working for others and serving others. And I think that that's, for me, ultimately the reward that I always seek every day, is that I make it better for kids. So as I look forward to the next 5 years, particularly with this incredible gift, what I look forward to is creating access to more kids like me, access to a Catholic education. It takes work, and it takes everybody, parents, kids. You have to want it. You have to want it. It's not going to be given to you. And I think that that's something that in today's society and our culture is maybe antithetical. You have to earn it. And when you earn it, it's not about, well, I deserve it. It's not about, well, I'm entitled to. Because if you're given it, you'll never feel the reward of earning it. So earn it for yourself, not for anyone else. You will never feel that true sense of freedom and independence until you have earned it on your own in your own merit. I could never tell this story today with you, Cynthia, if I did not have to earn it. And what a depressing story it would have been if I said, yeah, I was given this and I was given that, and I didn't really have to work very hard because, I was owed it. So yeah, great. No, the story is powerful because it was earned and because sacrifice came as a result of it. And I think that is the greatness of our nation, is that when you persevere and you overcome challenges and you seek the reward of that experience, you are a better human being as a result of it. And you end up becoming a great advocate and a great citizen insofar as contributing to the greater good of our society and our country. So I'm looking forward to inviting more kids into our schools, expanding access to poor kids and kids of color who have faced racial discrimination. And also, even what I would define, and I'll end on this, is what our middle class families are suffering with, which is having to work harder for less and having less discretionary income to afford a Catholic education. This gift is going to present an opportunity for those in the middle class families who in Los Angeles and greater metropolitan area are finding it more and more difficult to afford to live. So we're losing those families, and we need to earn them back. We need to earn their trust back and their investment back. So this gift is going to help make that happen as well.
Ooh, okay. You guys, what a way to kick off this mini series. If you have been looking for a leader of schools who aspires greater, who is an aggressive advocate, and is on a mission to provide more access for students like your own children, you have found that in Paul Escala. I'm convinced he's the leader that we've needed. So you've heard tips, tales, and truths from Paul, and here's my truth. I would say to you that, to me, what I've learned today comes from Paul's mother, and that is this: education is incomplete unless there's heart at the center of that. And what she also teaches us is, at the end of the day, we as parents and as champions of teens need to follow not just any compass, but a moral compass. And when we do that, we will choose at the end of the day to take the road less traveled. That, listeners, is the real truth. Thank you so much for joining us and being with us today. We know you have a very full plate, so thank you for spending some time. If this episode has in any way fueled your confidence or helped build your dreams, please share this episode with 3 people in the next 30 minutes. And if you're feeling extra loving today, hit subscribe so you don't miss another episode of this fabulous mini series. This also helps other listeners find us and begin their journey on Destination University. That's all I have for you today, my dreamers. Be sure to tune in next time. Until then, wherever you are, may you have a happy and sunny day. Bye for now.